This is the best deconstruction of the capitalist hellscape we currently live in, and you've been overlooking it for years. This is a breakdown of Limu, Emu, and Doug. We won't be covering any of the spin-offs, such as Truth Tellers, as well, maybe in another video, but right now I really just want to focus on this masterpiece. Okay, so in order for you guys to get a good idea of what I'm talking about and fully understand the impact of this series and the commentary it's making, we have to go over just some basic background information before we go episode by episode, breaking everything down. And we'll start with the economy of the world. So, first off, capitalist hellscape. And we know that Liberty Mutual is one of the main leaders of this, world movement. And as you can see them plastered everywhere. You can see them in billboards, on the side of the street, everywhere, and all with what they control. In fact, later in the series, we see them having authorization to do an undercover mission on a government, I won't say subsidy, building, a government-owned area. We also have our two stars of the series, and they work for Liberty Mutual. This is a story about watching two people who get too caught up in the idea of a client, the idea of constantly working. And it does make them famous, but it makes it so hard for them to be able to live a normal life. We have Doug, and while he is a very kind and trusting person who does a lot of things, it's always wrapped back into him selling insurance and getting people to switch. He is 1,000,000% a workaholic, and we see that throughout the series, and I'll point out in specific places. And this job has made Limu violent over time. He attacks people, he is also racist to birds, and while we do see some character progression from Limu, for most of it, anytime he sees a bird, he is fighting immediately. He's like a violent Uncle Tom, is the best way I can put it. And seeing his dichotomy throughout the show getting explored it's truly something special. And with now that you have the very basics, we can start getting into the episodes. Now, I do apologize if the episodes are out of order. This is from the streaming service that I watched, and the collection of everything that I watched that I will put in the description, but if it's out of the original release order, I do apologize, but it's just the limitation of what I'm working with here. Now, episode 1 is very much just mainly establishing the characters, establishing the team. Episode 1 is basically just a premise. It's very much a pilot, and we just see the duo at Doug's house, about to leave for work, going through the garage when the garage gets stuck. Then we move to episode 2, where we actually get our first look at the Liberty Mutual office that Doug and Limu, sorry, I've been calling him Emu, he is Limu, which reminds me, Limu is a genetically engineered emu that is created by Liberty Mutual to be the most optimized emu for selling insurance. And we can tell this because his name is actually Liberty Mutual, and that has been his name since birth. And we will get more into the origins of Limu later, but I totally forgot to talk about that in the establishing, so we're mentioning it here. We see them in a video call. While we don't learn too much, we do see the first glimpse of Emu's wife, which we do know it's his wife and not his mother from episode 5. Which we will talk about later when they're on a double date. As it goes through, the critiques of it are from the world itself, not necessarily the direct plot of Limu, and except for the character flaws it is brought from the job and becoming a workaholic or racist. Episode 4, we get our first look at Doug's past when we find out that before doing this, he used to be a barber. We also find out that Limu hates mullets because when Doug even mentions it as a joke, Limu freaks out and starts spazzing around in the chair. Episode 5 is where we see the previously mentioned. I think the term's aforementioned, but I can't remember, so I'll just say previously mentioned girlfriend from Limu. Uh, as well as seeing Doug's wife, I think, because we don't see any progression in their relationship, so I'm going to assume that. And this is where we see the first time that Doug is a workaholic, um, trying to continue to talk about work and saving people money while he is barbecuing, just having a good cookout with his friends. And you can tell his wife is clearly sick of it. It's not the first time. He is always doing this, and she has to explicitly force him to not stop talking about work, in which he gets visibly uncomfortable. Um, and then he offers Emu a chicken, which Emu gets upset that he offered him a similar species to him. Uh, and so he gets angry at Doug. However, it passes. It's not like a big character fight. It's not a separation. Episode 6, we start to see how much pull Liberty Mutual really has on this world, and how much their propaganda has spread throughout uh, at least this country. We don't see too many other places besides the US in this story. And we see it because Doug and Limu have now been made into a video game. And Doug is playing it being his favorite game because he gets to work at home. But it is a AAA VR video game that is incredibly popular in this universe, or at least we kind of have to make the assumption because everything else that is related to Liberty Mutual is. Okay, so episode 7 is huge for the lore. We learn more about the world and of and of Doug's past. So we do learn that in the lore of Limu Emu and Doug, that the MCU is canon because they are watching the Daily Bugle, um, and seeing the Spider-Man, I believe it's Homecoming, or No Way Home, fight that you see in the movie. And we also see that Doug was around radioactive spiders or that spider project when he was younger, because upon seeing Spider-Man's powers, he immediately knows that it is a radioactive spider and attempts to get bit. However, he does not, in a comedic twist, he does not find a radioactive spider. He simply finds a poisonous spider that he bites him and goes to the hospital. But this does show that he knows what these were, and that either means that he was previously working for Oscorp. I think that's the company that makes it in there. I think. Don't quote me on that. Um, because I know Oscorp is in other ones, but irrelevant. Um, or that I think is probably more likely is that Liberty Mutual was experimenting with radioactive spiders in order to boost their profits, or perhaps an army. We don't know about their. We don't know if they do have a military side, as we don't see that. But if they do, then the mutant spiders would, with spider powers as a project, does seem like it would make sense for them to research, especially being in a universe where superpowers and superheroes are real. We finally see how much Doug and Limu actually work, having a stakeout for 36 hours for the homeowners to come out and them to be able to sell their insurance. This showing the amount of hours that Liberty Mutual forces them to work like absolute animals. Uh, So 9 is relatively unimportant, right? However, we figure out that Limu likes the taste of coins, and that we see his superior intelligence, at least for Emu for solving the case that Doug was working on. This is an example. I'm sorry. I apologize. Episode. We're on 10, correct? Yeah. Episode 10 shows that Liberty Mutual workers have the authority to stop traffic, similar to how police are able to, with Doug and Limu doing such. We see Limu's violent tendencies in episode 11. You see that, or well, I guess racist tendencies, but he sees his reflection and immediately goes to fight. Just the sight of another emu um, sends him into that rage. Duo aren't musicians with getting hired to do a wedding. Doug plays the accordion despite his lack of vocal talent, and Emu plays the harmonica. Then we finally get to another like more important, more heavy episode. We see not the origins, but how long Doug and Limu have been working here, as they were already established in the early 80s, like they were established agents, meaning that they probably started as insurance agents sometime in the uh, mid to late 70s, uh, as well as being able to see what they both looked like at the time. Pictured, obviously. And we know the exact time period because um, we see that Walkmans are in common use, and that saw mainstream use in the early 80s. Obviously, there were ones previously, but seeing them often and seeing them in offices and shit didn't really happen until the early 80s. So that's how we know what time it is when they're established at this point. And we see it as Doug's um, case that got away. This episode is relatively unimportant. The duo go to the gym. We don't know if it's a hobby or not because they're at work when they're doing it. Episode 15, we see more of the duo's video game, um, and just the Liberty Mutual branded stuff, but not Doug. And sorry, I'm so sorry. Let me just make sure it's the right episode for you guys. All right, so episode 15, we learn that Doug is able to pilot a tractor, a helicopter, a rocket ship, a car, forklift, and a plane. However, he is not given any, despite his demands to cooperate. In episode 17, we see Doug's workaholism showing out, as when Limu and Doug are getting rewarded the key to the city, Doug isn't even able to take a second to celebrate, immediately going off uh, to sell for Liberty Mutual. We also see Doug's wife and Limu's wife as well, again in this episode. Episode 18 is more about the characters as we see Doug's impatience run rampant. Episode 19 is once again another character building episode where we see Doug's incredible proficiency in volleyball. Being able to play against a team of 6 pretty much single-handedly. Limu is there, but he is not helping really. So they end up scoring a point on Doug, and Limu just sits on the ball like an egg. Episode 20 is, I hate to say it, it's kind of a lazy episode, as it's just a rerun of episode, I believe it's 16? Yeah, except it's shorter, not showing how many vehicles Doug can pilot, which is the best part of that episode, so you can skip this one. 21 is a reference to episode 3, but it's in reverse, where Doug is playing with the filter instead of Limu. And we once again see Limu's racism as Doug accidentally uses the Emu filter, and Limu starts getting violent and attempts to attack his computer. Episode 22 is the previously mentioned undercover operation, where we see Liberty Mutual has the authority to perform undercover operations at government-owned facilities. And during the operation, we see um, Limu's racism coming up again, with him attacking a man just dressed as a bird. Uh, I think they were trying to insinuate drug use behind the, you know, outside of work, really, adding to that erratic behavior, increasing his hatred. I'm not sure what, possibly methamphetamine, Adderall, uh, crack cocaine. But regardless of what it has caused Limu to have this delusion that this mascot is a real eagle and fuels his hatred even more, attempting to fight it. So in episode 23, you see the Doug interacts with a bunch of birds, not just Limu. And regularly enough, you have a bunch of bird whistles on his keychain. Because he has a keychain full of bird whistles when he's trying to call Limu, um, and he accidentally calls a bunch of other birds. However, we do start to see Emu's rehabilitation because despite there being a bunch of birds, Emu does not get violent, which is a it's huge progress for him. And then in episode 24 and then 24.5, there's another rerun episode. Oh, my God, I look like a freak. Okay. There we go. But in episode 24, slash 24.5, we see that Lino and Doug have become the full face of the Liberty Mutual brand. Um, However, in the commercials, they're trying to replace the real Doug with an actor. And this actor is what the spin-off True Tellers is semi-based on. They have a lot of different characters, but he's kind of what they sold the spin-off with. Um, so we see that he does at least get picked up by the company, if not for the Doug position, because obviously Doug is losing his shit because he worked for all this, and then they're gonna just give it away at a snap of his fingers, showing how fickle capitalism really is, especially when ruled by one giant. In episode 25, we see um, that the Ghostbusters are canon in the universe of Limu Emu and Doug. And we also are once again able to tell what city it is because the Ghostbusters movie they are advertising takes place in two locations. It takes place in London and takes place in New York. And based on the architecture and the fact that they have the Daily Bugle on the TV, we can guess that they are located in New York City, New York. We also see, that the Marvel superheroes in this world, they either don't stop ghosts because it's out of their jurisdiction, or they don't stop ghosts, or they can't stop ghosts because of some reason I can't think of. Personally, I think it's the former, but we're never given an answer, so it's really up to your interpretation. And there's not really a good evidence in the series for either way, as both the Ghostbusters and the MCU characters are very minor. Ghostbusters, um, movie that it was Frozen Empire. That's what it felt like. Oh, so 26. We go back to um them trying to replace Doug for the commercials. But that's about it. Not much more. Episode 27, we can add a motorcycle to the list of vehicles that Doug can drive. And then episode 28, we see Doug and Limu's dedication to their job again, walking through a car wash to deliver their sales pitch to a driver. Uh, so I do really like this episode on like a on a critique level, right? I really like this episode as, it does go back to a more silly tone that the earlier episodes had. And while I'm glad they no longer have as many, non-important filler plots, I think it's nice to just see, them doing the job again. It feels like we've gotten so removed from it, uh, which kind of takes away the point of the show. That I don't know. I just think it's good. In so 29, we see more of the base, the boss's office, which is where the key that they earned in. I'll cover over that after this. That they earned in episode 17. Yes. And we also see the garage where the cars are kept, and we do see a pole where that Doug takes down, but there is also an elevator in the building. So episode 30, we see the bowling team that holy shit, guys. Okay, we see that Limu and Doug are in a bowling league, and both of them very much enjoy bowling. Doug is very good, but Limu continues to cheat. However, Doug, being such a great friend, he does cheer him on still. So episode 31 kind of introduces a little bit of a weird thing. As at first it looks like Doug is able to fix cars. However, they end up needing a mechanic. But then in a later episode, we see him being back in the mechanics area without anybody else there. So maybe Doug is a mechanic, maybe he's not. So 32 is a promotional event with a fan, which is very cool. In episode 33, we see that Liberty Mutual has made, or is in the process of making, an infinite pan, a pan that is able to hold things infinitely. In episode 34, we gain nothing except a bad joke. In 35, we get confirmation that even outside of work, Limu and Doug are BFFs, which we already knew, but it's nice to see the confirmation. And in episode 36, we see the end of Limu's character getting married and accepting his emu family. We also see that despite having two human parents, he is an emu and does have other emus in his family, not just his wife's family. Also, we find out that Doug is a registered priest who can officiate weddings. Limu and Doug have children with, they're each of their reserved, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but with each of their partners, and their kids are friends, and they want to be insurance agents when they grow up, playing insurance agents, dressing up as their fathers. They may also just be mini insurance agents for Liberty Mutual, but I'm assuming it's children because that seems a little ludicrous, Doug dreams of having a parade float made of him, and talks about it in therapy. And apparently he has the stream every night. And then episode 38 is really fun. It's a Halloween special where they get a makeup specialist who all put their name up, right? Here is dressed up as Doug, and then Doug dresses up as Emu and gets really cool makeup put on him, and they show him getting the makeup put on. In episode 39, we see Emu's two human parents, well, this is what I assume from the situation, right? I believe, well, let me get into what the episode is. The episode is, we see Limu's parents telling him not to be an insurance agent. And, continue to live on the farm, because Limu's can't be insurance agents. If it's taken at face value, which you can't with this show, you've already seen that, but if you do, you may say, oh, well, doesn't this disprove the idea that Limu is a genetically engineered emu to sell insurance? No. Here's what I think it really is. I think that Limu's parents used to work for Liberty Mutual as scientists, but when they saw the baby Limu, they realized what they were doing was wrong, so they took him and they escaped to a farm far down south with very limited technology, so that way Liberty Mutual uh, couldn't find them. And by them warning or telling him that he shouldn't go off and that he can't become an insurance agent, they were really just trying to protect him from falling into the life of uh, a Liberty Mutual worker working like 36-hour shifts, as we've seen through the show. But when they see that he is on TV, they accept it. Uh, or they accept the job. They always accept their job. And then the final episode for now is Limu playing a prank on Doug by dressing a scarecrow up as him. So now that we have gone through the episode and you have a good understanding of everything, I will now break down how this is such great deconstruction of our capitalist hellscape. So, throughout the series, we've seen how powerful Liberty Mutual has become, commenting on how we let billionaires run our lives and run our country. It's just much more apparent in the series. And they got there from running their employees ragged, 36-hour previously mentioned shifts. Uh, you have no job security. Even somebody as famous and important as Doug could be fired at any time. Thankfully, he doesn't, but we do see that possibility. We see that, what this cycle creates. It creates, workaholism, commenting on the grind set that is so prevalent in in our country. We see so many people unable to enjoy their lives, so they're too focused on getting money to enjoy themselves in the future. But then that comes into just continuing to get money. Uh, because you constantly think you don't have enough, which is shown throughout it with those, workaholism. We see the anger that this can bring. We can see the stress with Limu's probable drug addiction. Really, which is accurate. You see so many people in Amazon jobs and Tesla jobs and things like that turning to um, turning to substances, turning to alcoholism, turning to drugs to just try and cope with their miserable work life. And I think this whole show has just such great commentary on how we have to live our lives. Leo representing the anger that this can breed. Um, Doug showing how it leads to getting like too caught up in your work. And while we do see Limu get better throughout the show, we don't see that for Doug, showing that for some people it's just permanent. It's always like that. And I think it's the beauty of the show. It is the realism. It is how much real people these characters feel like. I think it's truly beautiful. I think that this is an unappreciated series that, while it was popular, it wasn't for the right reasons, and I'm hoping that you're now able to go rewatch this with a new set of eyes, a fresh breath of air in the series, because it truly is amazing, and I think more people should see it. And And I think it's not only beautiful, but it's important. It's a great warning to show what can and most likely will happen if we continue down this money is king mindset and path that we're currently on. And I just really think it's important. It's been real. It's been fun. Has it been real fun? Like and sub and shit.